Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview fascinating innovators and diverse change makers. With me today, I'm Deborah Levine. You know me as the executive editor of the American Diversity Report, and with me today is Tulika Mehrotra. She is a Chicago-based branding and communications expert. She has 15 years of experience in various sectors and organizations, including startups, working on brand building, digital marketing, and communication. Tulika began with Peterson Technology Partners in 2018 as a consultant, leading brand marketing, communications, and digital strategy efforts across the organization. In 2021, she was promoted as its first chief digital officer in 25, soon to be 26-year history. Welcome, Tulika.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for having me. This is going to be a great conversation.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's always a pleasure to meet people with the kind of experience and skills that you have. Tell us how you came about them.
Yeah, I guess maybe I can start with my education, which is sort of the fork in everyone's life to where they start. I have a degree in finance, but I didn't feel very passionate about that. And so for somebody who has right left brain tendencies, I ended up getting a master's degree in fashion in Milan. And from there, I ended up working in Manhattan in the fashion industry. It didn't really fit my personality. And so I ended up moving back to Chicago, which is where I'm from. And I was bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. And I started my own business, which was at the time, Netflix was flirting with streaming, studios were flirting with streaming, and I wanted to be an aggregator for long tail content, the kind of content that people can't find, documentaries, foreign films. But it didn't work out. I was in my 20s and I wasn't able to bootstrap a business of that magnitude. And I moved to LA and worked in the entertainment industry at a startup that was trying to disrupt animation. I spent about 4 years there learning all about the architecture and bones of building a business. And I also started writing. So in 2010, I started writing and went on a research trip to New Delhi in India. And I met my agent and a few publishers. And by the time I came back to the United States, I had a 3-book deal with Penguin. And so I've published 2 novels with Penguin. Fast forward, they became bestsellers in South Asia, which was a huge blessing. And I thought maybe I could be an author full time. Turns out you have to be J.K. Rowling to be a full-time author. So I decided to really introspect and look at where my strengths were, where my passions were. And I have a business background now, a strong business background. And now I know how to tell stories. And so I really wanted to find that intersection of storytelling and business. And so I started my own consulting company. I did have a number of clients. I helped them out with the branding and the communications, et cetera. And then Peterson became one of my clients. And I was 8 months pregnant when I started working as a consultant with Peterson. And so it really speaks to Peterson's culture as well, that they were open to great talent, right? No matter what stage of life that talent may be in. And so I started working with them in 2018. And then by 2020, I was so involved in building a team from the ground up, very much of a creative design studio, hybrid with traditional marketing, to build something that no other recruiting company really has. And so in 2021, I accepted the offer to be the chief digital officer here to help them sort of grow. So I've taken a number of very dramatic pivots in my career to bring me where I am. But truth be told, I don't think anybody is really going the linear path anymore. And so it's just a really great time to be in the workplace right now.
Oh, I would agree. I'm not sure the linear path was all that required ever. Ever. Oh, but my goodness, you have definitely shown that to be the case. So you're talking today a little bit about your generation and what is common with them and how they work, what they think, what their path is.
Yeah.
What do you see as Gen Z these days? What's going on?
Well, I think it's really important to understand that this generation has been born into a very connected time, right? So they don't know a time where they weren't completely and globally digitally connected. And so we need to understand that globalization connectivity is very important to them. It's about social justice. It's about increased diversity. This is the most diverse demographic ever. There's no other time in history that we've seen this kind of diversity in our workforce. And so we really need to respect what they want and meet them where they are instead of trying to force previous generations' focus points onto them. My objective in the work that I do and the team that I manage and any partners that we ever work with is how can we include a diverse perspective? That's always something that I have felt passionate about. Gen Z requires it. Okay, so it's something that is mandatory for them to feel comfortable to bring their skills to a workforce. And we need to be not only respectful of that, but we need to modify the way that we are operating to work with them. They are the future, right?
Yes, indeed. So tell me a little bit about those modifications. What do you see happening for that?
Yeah, so we need to be much more serious about corporate social responsibility. There needs to be a level of authenticity that is brought to the table. Right now, unfortunately, there's a bit of greenwashing or just general talk that isn't backed up with the walk. And so we really need corporations to understand that Gen Z will see through this. They will absolutely see through any kind of box checking or PR or the smoke and mirrors. They're absolutely going to see through that. I also think it's going to be very, very important for all companies to really implement diverse hiring practices. It's no longer the same old way of doing things. This is a very digitally savvy demographic. They know how to use social media, not just to communicate with their friends, but to get new jobs, to change professions, to do everything. They're on social media. So we really need to, as enterprises, as corporations, as recruiters, figure out how to, again, meet them where they are and show them that we're on board with exactly what they're looking for. I think the other thing that is critically important, every organization is going to have to promote diverse leadership. Lily Zhang has written this tremendous book, DEI Deconstructed, which I found tremendously interesting and very valuable. I highly recommend it to anyone interested in this field. She's talked about how you can't do one thing and expect it to have a domino effect. It has to be top down and bottom up. It really has to change the culture. And so if Gen Z is not seeing, leaders that look like them, they're not going to feel like they necessarily are included or seen or heard. Again, if you're not walking the walk and just sort of talking about it, they're going to see through that. And another really important thing that I would like to point out is employee resource groups. So this isn't something that organizations have necessarily invested in as much as they should have in the past. It's something that has been talked about. It's something that has been tried and it didn't work, let's drop it. They haven't necessarily considered the long game. I think this is something that is very, very important that will pay dividends for employees who have an opportunity to take advantage of it. I could go on and on, but I would love to specify anything that maybe would be more interesting.
Right. Well, I think the issue of ERGs, the employment groups, is one that is getting more focus these days, and because it does resonate with people and they need it to feel like they're included in the workplace. Yeah. Do you have some specifics on that?
So my organization, because we're 25 years old, we have a very global and diverse workforce. Instead of building them in-house, we have started working with outside partners. So for example, I'm a member of Chief, which is an executive women's network. And so I'm able to learn from these extraordinary executives who are just, they're unicorns in their fields, right? And so for me to have that, I guess, psychologically safe space where I'm able to connect on a human level and to connect on a leader level. I mean, this is just one example of how enterprises don't have to build it from scratch. You don't have to do it from the ground up. There are organizations that you can partner with that make it a lot easier, and they're able to do it much better than you trying to, build the house from the ground up as well. But it's just one example from a gender perspective. But from the LGBT side, from religious angles, there are so many organizations that are open to corporate partnerships. And just beyond employee diverse resource groups, you really need to think about what the culture is at the organization. If you're not celebrating Eid, if you're not celebrating Diwali, if you're not celebrating, the different holidays, what are you saying to your employees, right? So it's really important to be inclusive of different religions and different, faiths, different backgrounds, as well as giving them an opportunity to really have access to people that they identify with as well.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I have written several books just about the idea of religious diversity in the workplace, and I'll share them with you after we're finished so that you can see my quick reference religious diversity cards.
Oh, I can't wait.
Can be used, very easily, because a lot of people get confused. They're not quite sure what to do, where to go, how to celebrate, and when, the calendars are different. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is something these days, especially, that is so very relevant. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So all of this diversity is just wonderful to hear, and it's interesting. I have a question for you about PTP. How global is it?
We have teams in India. We have teams in South America. We operate somewhat in the UK as well. We are in Chicago, but post-pandemic, we are across the whole country. We have an office that we're starting in Texas as well. We're looking at, I believe it's Costa Rica. So we are truly global. It's no longer just the local. We had initially really perfected the born and bred in Chicago and focusing on one market, but it doesn't make sense. And it's exactly what is happening to the whole world, and what Gen Z is saying to companies as well, that you need to look at the whole world. But PTP is global.
Thank you. Fascinating. And tell me about all this diverse workforce efforts. How does it impact the company's bottom line?
That is, that's my favorite question. Because I think what ends up happening to a lot of corporations, because the bottom line defines everything, right? Your growth defines everything. And so this is not a nice to have. This isn't something where a leader is saying, hey, we should have more diversity because, it would be nice. It is absolutely tangibly impacting the bottom line. There are studies that have proven this. McKinsey came out with a study, and I have a stat here for you on that. It's fascinating, but not surprising, that the companies in the top quartile for gender diversity, only gender diversity on executive teams, they were 21% more likely to outperform on profitability. And if they had higher ethnic and cultural diversity, it was 33% more likely to outperform their less diverse competitors. And HBR has been quoted as well. I mean, this is data it's not new. It's been out there, and it's stunning to me that I still have to talk about this data. But HBR talks about how diverse teams just make better decisions 87% of the time. Not 10% of the time, not 87%, it's almost 100% of the time there's better outcomes. And so with regards to the bottom line, think about what goes into affecting the bottom line. You need employee engagement. Okay. If you have employee engagement, you're going to have better productivity. So if an employee feels like they can feel included, they are identifying at work, there's a sense of belonging, their work is going to be optimized. There's generally going to be an improved reputation for the organization if they are doing it authentically. And that's just going to attract better talent. There was Recently, the war on talent was the buzzword. It may not necessarily be a war right now, but there will always be a competition for the best talent. And the best talent is going to go where they feel comfortable, where they're compensated the best, where they feel the most heard, where they're doing work that makes them feel like they have a sense of purpose, but also where they feel psychologically safe. And so any organization who recognizes that they have to grow, they have to win with the best skilled talent workforce, they're going to have to diversify. There's no way around it. It's not an optional. It doesn't even need to be defended because it's so obvious at this point, but it just automatically, you're going to get better diversity. You've seen this in MBA case studies. You see it in the world. When you have a homogenous group, you're going to get very single-minded linear thinking. When you get diversity, you're going to get more opinions, more creativity. Everything will just blossom. I think it's the other thing that I would have to say is it's not enough to hire diverse teams. It's not enough to put somebody in a leadership position who happens to be an African-American woman. It's not enough to just do that. There needs to be something that is sincere, that is implemented in a sustainable way, that continues what has started, because otherwise it's very covert. It feels very much like, okay, go ahead, show us what diversity can do. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You need to be, it cannot be a purely financial play, right? So there really has to be some intention behind it that, I'm going to have CSR is going to be a priority. Employee resource groups are going to be a priority. We're going to change our culture. We're going to change our leadership at every level. And then we're going to continue and we will see what happens. It's not going to happen in 30 days. Right. So while there is a direct correlation, it's not immediate. It's not the kind of thing where you flip a switch and suddenly it's like, well, nothing happened. So I guess the data is wrong. That's not how it works.
So as we talk about all of this, I have two questions. One is about the executive suite.
Yes.
Right. Which has always been a bit of a problematic area for change and diversifying it. What do you see happening here?
I hesitate to make broad proclamations, but some of the things that are happening they're not great. And some are, nice to see. Since the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, we are seeing so many diversity officers being let go. This is a mistake. But then again, many of those same diversity officers had golden handcuffs where they were there in title, but maybe were not able to implement some of these initiatives. McKinsey actually talked about this as well in a report that they put out last year about the great breakup, where women are leaving. Women in the executive suite are leaving. And it's very much because organizations are not recognizing that there's a flexibility that is required, compass to match the skills. There needs to be an understanding that the old 9-to-5 pre-pandemic mindset doesn't fit anymore. There's just a new work-life balance thing that is no longer optional. There are people who need to take care of children, that need to take care of parents, that have things in their life, and that needs to be respected and understood in order to be able to get the best work out of people. And so in the executive suite, I think there's a shuffling that is happening. There's obviously a lot of leaders are retiring. Those that are staying are becoming more aware. But we're also in a very weird economic time where you can't necessarily say, are we going towards a recession? Are we in a recession? Are we, are things getting better? We're seeing layoffs in every direction. And so when the pressure is on, it's difficult for leadership to say, but you know what, I really want to have a diverse team. I'd like to invest X millions of dollars in, this initiative, which I can't say when or how much will affect the bottom line. And so it's a challenging time. It's a challenging time. And I think that's where organizations like the Chiefs, like the different groups that actually support people of color, people of different religious backgrounds, I think that's where they're really able to support talent and help sponsor them into the positions that actually fit. Almost every leadership position isn't either it's an executive search or it's a relationship that brings in that person, right? So again, once the mindset switches or changes step by step, I think it'll get better. Things are still a little messy and disconcerting. The world is in a very upsetting place right now as well. And so when we talk about these things, I don't want to dismiss the importance of this at all, but we also need to recognize that we will just have to keep taking baby steps. I do want to take a step back and say we made great strides getting diversity officers in and making sure that was front and center for a while, but it wasn't done in a way that was sustainable. And so what is happening right now may be a really important and necessary reset.
Wow. And how does Gen Z fit into that reset?
I think Gen Z has a lot more power and they know it. and that's wonderful because what they stand for is very important. Okay, so Gen AI and generative AI, excuse me, and artificial intelligence, it's changing our workforce, right? Layers are being collapsed in terms of hierarchies at organizations. And then you have a generation, Gen Z, coming in and saying, this is important to me. I want to be paid fairly. I want to be in an environment that reflects what I look like, what I believe in, and I'm not going to work for you until you make these changes, right? So we have a shuffling workforce anyway because of the proliferation of artificial intelligence and how it's automating things and how it's changing our workforce. We haven't quite figured out hybrid work perfectly yet. People are still resisting going straight to the office, but the way that this impacts Gen Z is they have a stronger voice in time of chaos or disruption. That's where there's also opportunity. And so I really believe that Gen Z is in a beautiful opportunistic space right now to ask what they want and to get it.
Wow. It sounds like going forward that Gen Z is going to be in control much more than they are at present, and their views are going to be heard even more as the chaos perhaps either gets better or gets worse. They are going to be heard.
Well, let's look at the time frame, right? The Gen Z generation was born in 1997 till 2012, I believe. Okay. And so they are literally the future. The older generation has experience and wisdom and advice that we can offer, right? But it's up to them to really carry the baton forward. And so what they choose to make of the workforce is going to be what ends up happening. Right? We can only sort of guide that generation with our best practices. And if it fits with their desires and their hopes and what they want to build, it will work. We're also in an environment right now where climate change is not really in question anymore. And Gen Z is very, very upset, and rightfully, that this is the world you gave us. And so they're very focused on things that matter. And so I'm hopeful. Now Gen Z, you can't just say they're all, in one big soup and they all feel the same things. They are very diversified as well, and they have very different opinions, some of them very extreme. And I think that's important. It's important to have that diversity of thought and mindset as well. But to your point, will they be completely in control? I don't know if it's going to happen right away, but they have a lot of power right now. And I think it's a beautiful time for them to use their voice for what really matters, like diversity and inclusion.
I love it. I'm fascinated by it. For a long time, my generation, the boomers, right, set the pace. Mm-hmm. And now I think it's this generation coming up that's going to do the same.
Yeah.
I hope they're like you and they write. And they document everything that they're doing and thinking so that we have a record of how this is forming. And it is history in the making.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope when you talk with them that you will encourage them to do so.
Oh, absolutely. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. And so it's not, I don't need an invitation to talk about this. But to your point, Deborah, the reason why your generation created the systems that were, it was because of the time, right? The era was different and the needs were different. And now all of our industries are going through massive change. They're going through massive transformation. And so in another environment, Gen Z would just be sort of like shouting to no one and nobody would hear them, but the timing is pretty perfect. There is massive transformation happening and they want change. And so it's just, I think the stars will align.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all turns out. And I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you about it. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. And this has been such a fun conversation, but I do want to talk about what Gen Z and your generation and every generation is doing now, which is pivoting, right? There's a level of introspection that has happened during the pandemic, which has turned into action. And so I'm really excited to explore the topic of pivoting and what people are doing with that. Are they burning down the house and starting fresh? What's going on? So I'm working on a project right now that I'm really excited to talk about for Q1 next year, which really delves into what Gen Z, what Gen X, what the millennials, what everybody is doing when it comes to pivoting with the pressures of the economy as they are now.
Oh, I can hardly wait.
Can't wait to read your books as well. I'm very excited.
Oh my goodness. Makes me think about some of the recent things that I've done, and maybe I'll share those with you. But for
So,
now, we're going to wrap this up. And thank you so much for all your wisdom and sharing it. And audience, this is wonderful. You can put questions in on the page where this will be at the American Diversity Report. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And thank you again.
thank you, Deborah.